Welcome, everyone, as we learn the venerable learning of Chok Yisrael for Parshas Vayakheil, Yom Sheni, Day 2, Be'ezus Hashem Yisbach. And this is, I think it's a first in Chumash Ma'is, where we're going to have a section of Chumash without Rashi. V'oros Elim Ma'adamim, and they donated the hides of the rams dyed red, v'oros Techashim, and the hides of the miraculous multicolored tachash that was only available at the time of the Mishkan, v'atzei shitim, and the acacia wood, umashkei dedichrei yisamkei, umashkei desasgavna, v'o'ei shitim, v'shemen lamar, and oil for light, ubesamim, and spices, l'shemen hamishcha, for the anointing oil, v'likteris hasamin, and the perfumed incense, umishcha anharusa, ubesmaya l'meshach revusa, v'likteris busmaya, v'avnei shayim, the onyx stones, v'avnei maluim, and the other precious gems that went into the settings, la'ephod, on the shoulder straps of the Kohen Gadol, v'lachoshin, and the breastplate of the Kohen Gadol, v'avnei burla, v'avnei ashlamusa, l'shakah, be'efoda, u'bechushna, v'chol chacham leiv b'chem, and all those that are wise of heart amongst you, yavo, they shall come, v'yasu, and do as kol asher tziva Hashem, all that Hashem commanded. V'chol chakimei liba, the bechon yesun v'yavdun yaskol the paket Adonai. And now we continue in Malachim, the story of the Bayis Rishon built by Shlomo HaMelech, and we said that he brought in a master craftsman from Tzur, Chirom, who was a master craftsman of copper, and he made huge copper pillars with very decorated crowns for the entrance of the ulim of the antechamber. The chaysaros asher al roisho amudim, the crowns that were on top of these pillars, maisei shushan, they were a work with lilies, ba'ulam, at the entrance of the antechamber, and the crowns were arba amas, were 4 amas long. The kaisarais al shnei ha'amudim, and there was a second crown on top of the larger crowns on the 2 pillars, gam mima'al, above the first crowns, mil umas habeten, starting from the belly of the first crown, asher le'ever hasvacha, which was above the netting. Remember we said the crowns had like a bowl shape, and this is which is an upper part of the first crown. Varimoinim, and we said there was a design of pomegranates. Mosayim, they were a total of 200. Turim saviv, there were 2 chains, each one round about with 100 pomegranates, and so it was ala kiseres hashenis, also on the second crown. That means the second crown, not the smaller crown, but the crown on the other pillar. Vayakheil es ha'amudim, and then they stood up these pillars, l'ulam ha'cheichel, by the entrance of the antechamber of the temple. Vayakheil es ha'amud ha'yamani, they set up the right pillar, which was on the southern side. Vayikra es shmo Yochin, and it was called Yochin. Vayakheil es ha'amud ha'asmaili, and the left pillar, which was on the northern side, Vayikra es shmo Boaz, and it was called Boaz. Val Rosh ha'amudim, and on the top of the amudim, Maisei Shoshin, was a work of lilies, Vatitim, and this concluded Meleches ha'amudim, the craftsmanship of these magnificent pillars. And now we continue from the wisdom of Shlomo HaMelech. Oid b'li ayel, a worthless witness who is a wicked person, Yolitz mishpat, he gives his suggestion of judgment with his falsified testimony to cause harm to people. But Ufi Risham, the mouth of these wicked people, Yavala oven, will be swallowed by their sin, by their mischief. They will suffer from their false testimony. Nachaynu laleitzim shvatim. There is prepared for scoffers judgment. Rabbeinu Shalom, this judgment refers, Rashi says, specifically to tzaras, because the lates that scoffs and says evil things with his mouth, he's the one that becomes a Mitzayra, because remember, Mitzayra is Moitzira, is he who pronounces evil. Malumos is an interesting word. Rashi says it means floggings, malchus. Malumos, there will be floggings, legev ksilim, to the body of the fool who does foolish things. Leit tzayayin, the scoffer desires wine. Homa, he cries out for sheikha, for strong drink. However, v'chol shoygebay, all who err in it and follow the temptations of spirits, lo yechkam. These people will never become wise. Naham kekfir, if you ever saw the roar of a lion, Naham kekfir, the fear that's generated by the roar of the lion, that's emas melech. That's the way we should have a fear from the king. Misabroi, because one who gets Hashem angry, choyte nafshay, forfeits his life. A person should have, that's what we ask on when we bench Reish Chodesh, we should have Chaim shel yiras shamayim v'yiras chet. A person should have fear of sin. And now we start the 22nd perek of Masechta Shabbos. Chavyis shenishbara. If, let's say, a barrel of wine, a huge barrel of wine breaks on Shabbos, matzilan heimenu mozon shalosh sudas, you could save from it enough wine for 3 meals. We don't want you to save more than that, because we're afraid that in haste to get empty utensils, you might come to carry it in the Rishus Harabim on Shabbos. But Vayakheil, you could tell others also that they could come and also take for 3 meals. Bo vatzilu lachem, take and save for yourself. But you can't sponge up the wine from the ground, because we're afraid you might squeeze it out, which is not allowed. Ein seichten as haperis leitzim mashkin, you can't squeeze fruit to extract from it juice on Shabbos. V'im yotz me'atzman, and if the juice came out by itself, asurin, you cannot use it, because we're afraid that you might then squeeze more. Rabbi Yehuda says, imla eichlin, if you had, let's say, grapes to eat, so if juice comes out, because we're not afraid that you're going to squeeze them more, because you're planning to eat it. However, but if you have these grapes for pressing, then then that which comes out by itself is forbidden. Chalas dvash sheriskan, if you have honeycombs that you already crushed them before Shabbos, and the honey is oozing out by itself, if you crush them Erev Shabbos, v'yotzu me'atzman, and the honey is coming out by itself, asurin, because we're afraid that you might press it more on Shabbos. Rebbe Eliezer says, since you crushed it before Shabbos, you could take the honey that oozes out, and we're not afraid that you're going to crush it more, since it's coming out by itself. Kol sheba b'chamin, anything yovesh, anything dry that was already cooked, may Erev Shabbos, you could soak it again in hot on Shabbos, because ein bishul acha bishul. There's no cooking after cooking. You can't put it in something on the fire, but you could put it into hot that's not on the fire. V'kol sheloi ba b'chamim me'erev Shabbos. But if it wasn't cooked before Shabbos, then medichan oisei b'chamim b'Shabbos. You could rinse it with hot on Shabbos, but you can't put it into a pot of hot, even if it's off the fire, except for the following things that you can't even rinse with hot water, because rinsing them with hot water are their completion. Chutz min ha-maliyach hayoshin, a aged salted fish, and v'dogim meluchim ketanim, and small minnows of fish, v'kul yosoi spanin, and Spanish mackerel, because their scalding is like their cooking. Shadachos, and scalding them with hot water, zui gmar malachtan, that's their completion. If you have a sealed barrel of dried figs, you could chop off the top of the barrel to get at the figs, as long as you don't make a proper hole, because then you are rendering the barrel into a finished keli. If you have a stopper in a barrel, you cannot make a hole in it, because that's fashioning a keli. The Chacham say that's not the usual thing, that you make a hole in the stopper, and therefore it's permitted. But everybody agrees you can't make a hole on the side, because making a hole on the side is making it into a keli, because you don't want to take out the stopper, because then dirt and debris will fall from the top, and therefore you want to make a hole on the side. If it had already a hole, you can't close it with wax, because we're afraid you'll smear the wax, and smearing is an issa d'oraisa of mimareach, mipneishu mimareach. Rabbi Yehuda Ma'aseh ba lefnei Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai ba'arav. An incident came to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai in the town of Arav. V'amar, and he said, when a person put wax on the hole, I'm concerned that he would be chayiv a sin offering. He wasn't certain, because if he just dabbed it on, then that wouldn't be an issa d'oraisa. But he wasn't sure if he smeared it or not. Now, noisin tafshel l'seich habar, you could put a cooked dish into a cool pit, b'shvil sheyeh shama, that it shouldn't spoil. Now, the chiddush is, why shouldn't you think that you shouldn't be able to do it? We might be afraid that you might level the bottom of the bar in order that the pot should sit and not be on an angle, and leveling it would be a tolda of binyan, or a tolda of chayresh, of plowing. So we're not worried about that. V'samayim hayofim baram, and you could put a canteen of good water into a cold, unclean, dank pit, b'shvil sheyetzanu, in order that it should chill the water. Now, there's no chiddush in that. The chiddush is the next case. V'satzaynein b'chama, you could put a canteen of cold water in the sun, that it should get hot from the sun, because the only isser of cooking on Shabbos is cooking in a derivative of fire. Cooking in the sun is not a problem. If your clothing got soaked on the way, you got caught in a downpour. Now, do you have to take them off so that you shouldn't worry that somebody should think you washed your clothes? Mahalach behem, you could walk with them, but when you reach the first available place where you could dry them out, you should leave them in the sun. They should dry out, but don't do that where people see that they shouldn't think that you did a wash on Shabbos. If somebody went into a cave to bathe, now you're not allowed to on Shabbos bathe in water warmed by a fire, and that's why it says if it was done b'di'evet, or if you bathed in the hot springs of Tveria, and then in a stafeg you dried yourself. Even if you use 10 towels, so none of them were very wet. Even if there's an erev, you can't carry them home, because we're afraid that maybe you'll squeeze them out. But even 10 people could dry themselves in one towel, even though now it's very wet. and it can bring it home, because since it's 10 people, each will remind the other not to squeeze it out. Sachin umamashmishim b'bnei ma'ayin. You could anoint and massage the stomach for pleasure on Shabbos. Avaloi misamlim, but you can't pummel it. V'loi misgarden, you can't scrape it, because that's considered an uvda dechal, a weekday activity. Ein yordin lekardima. You can't go to the pools of kardima, because to go down there is very slippery, and you might slip, and your clothing will get wet, and you might come to wring them out. Ve'ein oisin apiktoisin. You can't use a emetic. Is that the pronunciation? Emetic?
You're talking about a medicine?
Yeah. You can't use an emetic to stimulate vomiting, because that's for medicinal purposes, and we're not supposed to do medicinal things. Of course, if a person is nafal ala mishkav, he's very sick, you could use it. Or for poison control, of course you could use it. But we're afraid that if you do something medicinal, you might come to grind medicine. The ein ma'atzvin es hakotten. You can't align the limbs of an infant, because again, that is considered. Rashi says, the Rav says that it's considered like building. The ein ma'zirin es hasheva. You can't return a fracture, set a fracture. We don't paskin this way. We hold you can't set a fracture, because otherwise there could be a danger to the limb. Misha nifrika yoda viragla, if his hand or his foot became dislocated, lo yitrafein b'tzayni, you shouldn't wash it vigorously with cold to realign it, because that's medicinal. Obviously it's talking about where he's not in a lot of pain. Aval roichet sukedarka, you could bathe a normal way, wash it a normal way, v'im nisrapa, and if it comes back into place, that is fine. Now we learn from the Gemara in Shabbos Daf Kuf Mem Hey, deep into Masechta Shabbos. Excuse me, I made a bracha already. Yosef Reb Chia bar Abba, Rebbe Asi, Kamei de Reb Yochanan. This was common, that if the Rebbe had to take a nap, he would doze, but even during his dozing, he utilized his time to listen to the students, and then afterwards he would correct them. So Yosef Reb Chia bar Abba Reb Asi Kamei de Reb Yochanan. Reb Chia bar Abba and Reb Asi was sitting in front of Reb Yochanan. Yosef Reb Yochanan become an amnei, and Reb Yochanan was dozing. Amalei Reb Chia bar Abba Reb Asi. So Reb Chia bar Abba said to Reb Asi, "Mipnei mo oifer shebebavel shmeinim." Why are the birds in Bavel fat? You know, the Torah has an answer for everything. Hafeichba, the kulaba. Turn it around. Everything is in the Torah. So Amalei, so he says it's not true. Klach lemidbar Aza, go to the desert of Aza, ve'eracha shmeinim, and I'll show you even fatter ones. Mipnei ma moyadim shebebavel smeichem. Why are the festivals in Bavel so happy? So he said, you know why? Mipnei shein aniyim, because they're poor and they don't have food the rest of the time, so they really appreciate the festival. Mipnei ma talmidei chacham shebebavel mitziyonim. Why did the talmidei chacham in Bavel wear such fancy robes? They wear such fancy kaftans. Lefi sheinam bnei Torah, because they don't have so much Torah substance, so they need to stand out by their garments. Their Torah doesn't make them shine enough. Why are the Gentiles foul? Because they eat vermin, they eat creeping things. Isabu Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan then awakened, and now he's going to correct them. Amalu, he said to them, Dardike, children. Now it's very appropriate, he calls them children, like we said, the Rebbe is a father. He brings them into Olam Haba. So they're his children. Dardike, my children. Loi kach amarti lachem, didn't I tell you, Emor lachachma achoisia, tell wisdom you are my sister. What is the connection between wisdom and a sister? Im baru lecha davar ka'achoischa shi'asur lecha, if a piece of knowledge is as certain to you as the fact that you are forbidden to your sister, amreyu, only say it. V'imla, but if not, taimreyu, don't say it. In other words, you're talking about things that you're not certain about. Amrulei, so they said to him, V'lei malon mar ezemehem, so let the master tell us the true pshat. So he says, let's start from the top. Why are the birds in Bavel fat? Because the birds in Bavel were never exiled from their land. Shenemar shanon moyav min urav. Moyav was secure from its youth. V'shoiket hu el shmarav, and it sits in solitude like upon its sediment. Ubagoyla loy halach, and it didn't go into exile. How do we know that the birds of Eretz Yisrael were exiled? The Tanya Rabbi Yehuda Aimer Chamishim Shtayim Shana, for 52 years. For 52 years, like Avar Ish be Yehuda, no man passed through the lands of Yehuda. Shenema al Hechorim Ese B'Chivanei, on the mountaintops we will raise a cry and a lament. Me'oif Hashemayim, from the birds of heaven, vad behema, until the animals, noddu halachu, they wandered and left. And how do we know it's 52 years? Because behema b'gematria chamshim v'tartahava. The gematria behema is 52 years. Mipnei ma moyedim shebabavel smechem. Why are the holidays in Bavel happy? Mipnei shelo yayu ba'isa klala. Because the holidays in Bavel didn't get the curse of the holidays in Eretz Yisrael. I will cause to seize the joy of Eretz Yisrael, Chaga, its festivals, Chocha, its new moons, V'Shabbata, its Shabbos, V'chol Moyada, and all of its seasons. Why are the scholars of Bavel so decorated? Because they're not in their place. You know, a person is, when he's in his place, he's known as a sage. When he travels somewhere else, he's known because he wears rabbinical garb. In your city, you have your own name. People know who you are. But if you're not in your city, it's what you're wearing. Why are the Gentiles repulsive? Because they didn't stand by Har Sinai and bask in the radiance of Hashem. When Nachash had relations with Chava, Hitl Bazuama, he injected into her a pollution, a foulness, which passed to the human race. Yisrael she'amdu al Har Sinai, Klal Yisrael that stood by Har Sinai, Poska Zuamasan, their Zuama ceased. The Gentiles shaloyamdu al Har Sinai that didn't stand by Har Sinai, loy Poska Zuamasan, their foulness did not cease. So Amalei Rav Achabrei Rav Ashi, what about a ger? Gerimai, they weren't by Har Sinai. Does that mean that they have this pollution? Amalei Afal Gav de Inu loy hava, even though they weren't by Har Sinai, but Mazlayu hava, their mazel, their guardian angel was by Har Sinai. The guardian angel of future Gerim were by Har Sinai. Those that are with us actually today, Lefnei Hashem Elokeinu, ve'es asher einenu poi, and also those are not yet here, but their mazel is here, and therefore, because of that, the ger does not have the pollution as well. And now we're going to learn a rather esoteric piece of Zohar. I will give as a preface to this piece of Zohar what I tell you when I was asked to do the Chok. I said that I'm not a master at Zohar, and I was told that the Arizal says that some of the Zohar we will not necessarily understand, but our neshama understands it. And the Arizal felt that it was food for our neshama, even if we ourselves are too small to understand it. Now, if you remember, we're picking up in what we said that when we say Shemona Esrei, with our build-up of Pesukei Zimrei and Birchas Kriya Shema, we were busy adorning the Shechina HaKadoshah, the Bechina of Malchus, to be ready to greet Kutch Barichu, Zer Anpin, and the fusion, the synthesis occurs at its highest level when we say the last three brachas, and there is where it reaches its highest union. And at that time, the Rebbeinu Shalom, Kutch Barichu, Ushchinte, gathers in Ruchin, Unefashim, nefashis, spirits and souls are gathered in, and at that time we bend down in Tachnun and we offer ourselves Mesiras Nefesh to Rebbeinu Shalom, and we try to be davak, to cleave with the Rebbeinu Shalom. So now we'll see that Rav Chia is having this discussion with Rebbe Abba, and he tells him, Mila da, what I'm about to tell you, this matter, Shamana, I have heard, Berozin, in secret, from the secrets, the Betzina Kadisha, from the Holy Lantern, that's Reb Shimon Vayakheil, V'lo is Yehivli Rishu Ligala'a, and I have no permission to reveal it, Baal L'chu Chasidei Elyon, except to you elevated, pious people. He's talking to Rav Chia. The Ibahi Shata, at that time, the Ihi Noktin Nafshin Veruchin, that the Kutchabrichu Shchinta gathers in nefashis and spirits that are hovering outside that didn't find their place. Beru'ud devekusa chada, in the desire of this new cleaving that happens by the last three brachas of Shemona Esrei. If the person that does taknon, yeshave libe uru'usei leda, concentrates his heart and his desire to this, v'yov nafshe b'dveikusa bahu ru'usa, and he dedicates himself to attaching himself with a desire, la'achlolala bahu devekusa, to be united with this devekus, with the Shechina, is kabla bahi shata bahu ru'usa, is kablas, is kabla, is kablas, if he is accepted. The Bir Azayah says if he's completely righteous, is kablas bahi shata bahu ru'usa, if he's a tzaddik gama and he is allowed to attach himself, the inner ruchim v'nafshim nishmas and the nokta, and he joins the spirits and the souls and the neshamas that the Shechina Kedosha with HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes. Hai Iyu Barnash, he is a person, if he is accepted into this group, into this grouping at this time of Dvekis, this is such a person, the Itzerir B'tzrora Dechaya, he is considered bound in the binding of life, B'hai Alma, while he's in this world, Uba Alma Da'asi, and in the next world. V'su, The boy is kalla mikol sitrin. He has to unite from all sides. Malka matronisa. Malka, of course, is Kuchberichu, Zer Anpin, and the matronisa, the Shechina Kedosh, the Bechin of Malchus, Melaelo mitata, in the realm above and below, Ulesatra b'nishmosim b'chol sitrin, and to imagine that the Shechina Kedosh with HaKadosh Baruch Hu is crowned with souls from all sides, is atris b'nishmosim melaela. He's crowned with neshamas above. This atris b'nishmosim milsata, and crowned with the neshamas of pious people all over the world that are saying tachnun with the right thoughts. The ibar nosh yichaven libe uruusei lecholda. If a person concentrates his heart and his desire to all of this, v'in yimsar nafshe, he offers his soul mitata to the Rabbeinu Shalom b'dveikusa b'ruusa, with a desire to attach himself to the Rabbeinu Shalom, kama de itmar, like we mentioned. Kedain kutche berichu karile shalom l'sata. Then Hashem calls him Shalom, a man of peace below. Kigavna dao shalom de la'ela, corresponding to the shalom above, the bechin of Yesod. Ha'u de baruch la la matronisa, that which the Shechina HaKadosh is blessed with. V'achlula v'atula b'chol itron, and crowns her and unites her with all types of crowns. Now, his being called Shalom, Ufachi, Hai Barnosh Kutchaberichu Karole Shalom Usata, he's called a man of peace below. Kamodat Amar Vayikru Hashem Shalom, Hashem calls him peace. V'chol Yoimei Hachi Karn Leila, and all the time they call him peace, Shalom. Begin the Achlol V'ater L'matronisa L'sata, since he participated in uniting and crowning the Shechina below, Kigavna do Shalom La'ela, like the peace that's affected above. Now, this bodes well for him after 120. V'kadis talakahu bar nashmei alma, when the person leaves the world, nishmasa solka, his soul goes up, uvaka b'chol inun rikian, and breaks through all the celestial heavens. V'les man diyimcha biyadi, no one can stop him. The Kuchabrichu Karilei Hashem calls him v'amar yavai shalom, come peace. He has safe passage. Ushchinta amris yanuchu al mishkavaisam, and the Shechina says, let him rest on peace on his bed. V'yiftachan la tleisa turei dafar samah dachya, and there will be open to him 13 mountains of pure balsam. V'lo yeman diyimche biyadi, there will be nobody stopping him from climbing. He said the neshama should have an aliyah. It will be a complete aliyah, and no one will stop him. V'aldo zako ihu, and therefore fortunate is the person mandi yeshave libe uruuse leda, a person that directs his heart and desire to this. V'aldo ksiv kol nediv libai, anyone who is generous of heart, yivi'eha, brings her, that means brings the matronisa, the Shechina, a strumas Hashem, an offering to the Kuchabarichu, legabi malka ilah, to unite the Shechina with Kuchabarichu, kamadi itmar. Orim Rabbi Abba Kali, Rabbi Abba then raised his voice. Hey, what will we do without Reb Shimon Vayakheil? V'amavai Reb Shimon, woe Reb Shimon, ant b'chayin, you're still alive, v'ana b'chein Allah, we're crying over you. Lo Allah b'chin, we're not crying for you. Ela b'chin al chavrayo, b'chin al ama, we're crying for the holy group and the rest of the world. What will we do without you? Reb Shimon kibutzina d'shraga is like a shining light. The adlik le'ela v'adlik l'sata, who illuminates above and illuminates below. U'b'nahari the adlik l'sata, and the light that he lights below, nihirin kol b'nei alma, illuminates the whole world. Vaila alma, woe to the world, kad yistalik naira delisata, when the light below goes out, binahora delaela, woe to the world, when the light below goes out and it goes above. Man yanir naira daraisa alma, who's going to illuminate the Torah to the world? So come Rabbi Abba v'noshik Reb Chia. Rabbi Abba got up and kissed Reb Chia. Amalei milan ilan havitchais yadcha. These words you had under your hand. V'aldab kuchberichu shedarnei adhacha. And that's why Hashem sent me here. L'sachabra imchaim, to get together with you. Zakochu lucky. Lucky am I. Fortunate am I that I learned this. Now the takeaway from this esoteric Zohar is the importance when we put our heads down in Tachna. Foolish are the people that try to get away with saying Tachna. I mean, sometimes there's a valid reason, but Tachna is an extraordinary opportunity. We put our heads down. It's something that we cannot see in this world. It would be too fearful to look at. But we're thinking about this elevated level of the manifestation of Hashem in this word, the Shekhinah, uniting with the manifestation of Hashem above. That's the synthesizing of the Shekhinah and Kutcha, the synthesis of Shintra and Kutcha Barichu, and at that time we offer ourselves up and we want to be included in this unification, and at that time, if we have this, we are considered a person of Shalom. Shalom also is Shleimus, completion, and that will give us safe passage in the future world. And now we learn on a very practical level, but a very demanding level, the Musar, that a person should know that with minimizing, at least sometimes, food intake, we protect ourselves. Amra b'Zohar HaKadosh Parshas Truma, Gufein the tzaddikai, the bodies of the righteous, Deloi ismashku b'hai alma basar hanoin dahi klipa, the bodies of the righteous that didn't let themselves be pulled to the pleasures of the other side, the klipa, the sitra achra, Loi sholta alai ruach mesava klal. Their bodies don't have tumah. The loi is angu b'hai alma, because they didn't benefit in this world. Elamit tanuge the mitzvah, only from benefits of mitzvah, if they ate by a bris or a pidyon aben, v'shabbos and v'chagin and Shabbos and Yom Tov. So ahu ruach mesava, the tumah lo yachol l'shalta alayu klal. Tumah doesn't devolve upon them at all. Kevan delois angu midilei klum, since they didn't benefit from tumah at all. However, v'i is hane midilei b'yoymin dechol, but if they drew pleasure during the weekdays, alei itmar, on it, it says in Malachi, v'zerisi I scatter, perish al pneichem, dung upon your face. Now, this very vivid metaphor is that we have to understand that feces represent the part of food which is pure lust. Because the part of food that's necessary for the body stays in the body. The feces is the part of the food that the body doesn't need. So the feces represent that part of the food which is only lust. So that will be upon your faces. The Tana debate Eliyahu, they taught in the academy of Eliyahu, Lo yizocha adam l'Torah. If a person is not having atzlacha with Torah, let's say it's not going. Yevakesh rachamim ala chilu shtiya yaseira. He should ask for help that extra food and drink shalo yikanes l'seich meyav. That if extra food and drink doesn't come into his stomach, then that's an assistance to have atzlacha in his learning. The Amru Kadmonenu, and our ancient ones have told us, Hageder la'odam, Hageder amufla la'odam, a great safeguard, a wondrous safeguard for a person who amachel, is through the correct eating of food. Uksiv shaymer pivu l'shaynai. Now usually this pasuk is taken to refer to Lashon Hara, but it also means not to eat in excess. Shaymer pivu l'shaynai. If a person watches his mouth and his tongue, shaymer mitzaras nafsha. He protects his soul from distress. And now we learn, if you remember, the Rambam had told us that we daven 3 tefillas, Shachris, Mincha, Ma'ariv, and on Shabbos we also daven Musaf. Now the Rambam introduces that just like in the Beis HaMikdash we have the obligatory kabbanas, and then we have voluntary kabbanas. We could bring nedavas. So he says that in Shemona Esrei too, we could daven. We don't do this, but we could daven extra Shemona Esreis as a tefillas nedava, as a voluntary. Tefillas elu, these 3 tefillas a day, ain't poichsin mehem. You can't do less than them. You could do more. If he wants to daven the whole day and connect with the Rebbeinu Shalom the whole day, harishus biyadai. The kol oisin atfilas and these extra tefillas sheyosef, it's kamay makriv nedavos. It's as if he brings free will offerings. Now, since it's a free will offering, v'fikach tzarich sheyechadish davar b'chol bracha min ha'emtzayos me'ein ha'brachas. He has to add something new in each bracha, a new nekuda, a new caveat in each of the middle brachas to make it like a new offering. But if he makes a chiddush even in one of the brachas, die, kadesh loidia, to differentiate she nedava that it's a extra offering v'loy chava, not one of the mandatory ones. The gimel rishonis, the gimel achraynis, but in the first 3 blessings and the last 3 blessings, he never adds. You don't add to them. You don't detract from them. You don't change anything in them. Now, this is true about an individual. But the chazan that davens for the tzibur ain't not tzibur mispalin tefillas nadav. The chazan can't daven an extra Shemona Esrei. Lefisha ain't not tzibur mevi'in carbon nadav. The community never brings a voluntary offering. Now, Yochid cannot daven more than 1 musaf. V'lo yispal afilu Yochid musaf shtayim. You cannot daven on Shabbos or on Rosh Chodesh 2 musafs, achas choyves hayom v'achas nedava, 1 obligatory and 1 extra. Lefisha ein misnadvin carbon musaf. You cannot bring a carbon musaf as a voluntary offering. Now, v'yesh min ha'ga'onim, there are from the ga'onim mi shahira she'asa l'spal tefillas nedava b'Shabbos v'yom tovim. It's forbidden to daven these extra Shemona Esreis on Shabbos and Yom Tov. Lefi she'ein makrivim b'hem nedava, you cannot bring a voluntary offering on Shabbos and Yom Tov. Ela choyves hayom bilvad, only the obligatory offerings of Shabbos and Yom Tov supersede the Shabbos and the Yom Tov. We want to thank you all very much for joining us and wish you a wonderful day.